Want the reward? Do the damn work. Challenge yourself. Inspire change. Choice, not luck. Hey everybody, Todd Crandall, the original sober triathlete, bringing another Racing for Recovery quadcast. Because we have 4 today. First time I've ever done a quadcast before. How do I want to start? Well, first of all, welcome Sean, Jen, and I won't get into the Panama thing yet, but this is Pam. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
Good, thank you.
Who's nervous?
Tiny bit. A little bit.
This is just a conversation. I've never done this format, as I said, and the reason I'm doing it is there's many reasons. One, you guys are doing excellent here. And I want to let's start with that. I want to know what has been working for you guys here. You each chose one of our books that's resonated with you. Anything that's from these books or from our program, I want to start off by what is working for you here at Racing for Recovery and how are you doing? Whoever wants to start. Jen, I'm looking at you, so go ahead.
I'll go because I think you already know I have some pretty strong views on this. I was blessed to be handed a copy of this book back in June by a friend, and I opened it up, and I had previously been through other programs before, and nothing really resonated with me. And I started reading, and it was like a fog lifted, and there was light all around me because you told me in these words that I had a choice. And I'd never felt like I had any choice in my life from a very young age. I felt that things were put upon me, that I had expected behaviors that were necessary to survive. I felt that choosing alcohol wasn't a choice, it was a disease, and that it was a part of the brokenness of who I was. And having this book given to me and the opportunity to change my perspective has completely changed who I am sitting here now.
Okay, I'm realizing right off the rip that I could be doing this for about 2 hours, which I'm not going to do. How about we do this? Based on what you just awesomely said, let's stick to the power of choice for a second. You talked about what Cleveland and being here and understanding the magnitude of the power of choice. Pam, I'm going to talk to you, and let's switch it over with the power of choice with the nutritional component that you have. And I'm going to circle back, and we're going to do a lot more stuff, but I just want to get 3 comments on choice from what you've learned here. How about do no harm and food stuff that you're now learning about a choice with?
I am grateful for learning that I have a choice now. I think I knew that as like a concept before, but I wasn't doing it. And the support that's given to us here with our facilitators really helps me to be able to kind of follow in someone's footsteps. They are, I can see they're making choices, and I can see that they're making good choices. And then I feel inspired to make good choices.
How is that? You mentioned that you knew that before, but from what I hear you say, you weren't implementing it. What happened that you now embrace that power of choice and actually are implementing it?
That does kind of come to the no harm book. I knew that it was, not something that sat well with me, eating meat. or animal products of any kind. And then I think we watched, I can never remember the name of one of the documentaries, and it also included stuff about the environment. And I don't know, that combined with reading the book made me feel like I had power. I had the ability to take in the information and then make the decision myself and make little decisions that add up to big change.
Has the self-empowerment with respect to your nutritional choices, how has that enhanced your sobriety choices?
It reinforces the choice to stay clean. Like I'm treating my entire being with staying clean. It's not just about my body. It's also about how I feel spiritually, and how I can make a difference, no matter how small it may be. It's still making a big difference to the animals, and I feel connected to something now.
Right, we're rolling again. I think this is gonna be a long, good conversation. Sean, you're actually holding Choices and Consequences. You've made some obvious, amazing, positive choices. What is it about the power of choice that has really aided your awesomeness since being at Racing for Recovery?
I don't know. I like Choices and Consequences because, like, I feel like that's probably, I started with There's More Than One Way to Get to Cleveland, but then I read Choices and Consequences. I feel like everything in life is a choice. I mean, what I decide to do, how I decide to deal with things, how I decide to react to things. I don't know. There's a lot of power in choice, I choose every day to get up at 4:00 in the morning and go hit the gym, which has been, a huge part of my recovery here at Racing for Recovery. I was struggling with major depressive issues when I came through the door here. And, but from like the second day I got here, I chose to get into the gym, and I chose to continue to go to the gym. And that's been a big part of me pulling myself out of that major depression that I was struggling from. Just all the exercise. I do strength training with Joey, and choosing to do that, I feel like let me rephrase that. I know that the exercise that I choose to do has helped me to get, the chemicals in my brain rolling at a natural flow.
Has your self-esteem and self-worth been enhanced since you've been making these choices you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm 45 years old, and honestly, I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life. As far as my self-worth and all that, I do a lot of volunteer work around here as far as helping out in the kitchen and things, and facilitating meetings and whatnot. And I feel like that's really helped add to my self-worth. It's helped me build my confidence. And, those have been choices that I've made since I've been here too. I mean,
so I love this. And we're already talking about a balanced, holistic lifestyle. We're talking about a variety of things that are helping all of you awesome souls get better, if you will. Let's switch this now, and who knows what format we're going to go in, but let's talk about what brought you here, specifically trauma. When I say that, I know some of your guys' stuff, you certainly don't need to do that here, but the impact of it on an emotional level, I'm interested in that. That's what I'm interested in. Why don't we do some of that, and then we'll just keep rolling and see where we'll go. Why don't you start on this one? We started with Jen last time. Pam, you go ahead.
Okay. I think because my trauma happened when I was so young, I thought that I was extra powerless somehow, that that it was just so ingrained that it was hopeless. And since I have come here, I see that like the past doesn't really matter so much. What I'm doing right now and what I have set goals to do is what really matters.
Do you think you need to understand the past to, as you said, not have it be the focus? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And how then is that helping your present as you prepare for your future?
Run that by me again.
I'm not smart enough to remember what I just said.
I think you said something about my past. Like, do I
When-
need to understand it? I think that having some understanding and some insight is important. Like,
Yeah.
like identifying something before you can tackle it.
When you said like it's not as important, that's what led me to, and I agree with you. And we were saying once you do understand it, it gives you the ability to have a better present as you're preparing for a better future. And that's what I'm interested in. How are you doing that?
Okay, so, for example, I know that it affected my self-esteem. So once I was able to identify that, I can make choices that build my self-esteem. Working out, sharing in the groups, eating a plant-based diet, which is a lifestyle that makes me feel more humane.
Good word.
And so if I hadn't explored the trauma, then I might have just thought, well, where did this come from? Like maybe, and more like it's my fault. Like I somehow did it to myself.
And aren't you doing some art therapy stuff too?
Yes.
Right.
It's been wonderful to run, like once a month Jen and I get to run an art therapy group, and that's what my degree is in. And I had kind of gotten away from my whole like life's purpose, and now I feel it again. It's amazing.
Was your talent in art utilized previously as a coping skill to deal with trauma?
No, I kind of found my own way to that. I had heard of people getting help that way, but I don't know if I didn't really have access to it. And, in other treatment programs, I feel like that they had like arts and crafts therapy, but not like expressive, deep, emotional art.
And that's what's changing here.
Yes.
Talk about how expressing that deep emotional art is helping you.
When I make a piece of art, I can look to the art and see things that I didn't see before that I might not be able to grasp on my own or like identify on my own. It helps other people to understand me because they can look at the art and say, oh, I see this. Okay. Now I get it. And it also builds self-esteem, and I feel like it's a release. Once I finish something, I'm like, okay, now this has been recorded, so I don't have to keep thinking about it over and over and over again. It's been recorded. It can be set aside, like physically, like metaphorically and physically.
One more question on that. What does the world need to know about you that's good, that they can use for themselves?
That I have used education, therapy, spirituality, mental health, and physical health, that it is possible to change yourself, that you have so much power, and that there's so many different ways to get there.
Right on. Miss Jen, trauma, how did it impact your life? What have you learned about it to enhance your life?
I think similarly to what Pam was saying, my trauma started at such a young age that I was never afforded the opportunity to understand what it meant to be Jen. I was what was done to me. I wasn't me. And I've had to deeply examine the trauma to understand that fact that I was buried beneath so much darkness. I had to tear it apart to find the light inside me.
I don't know if the camera was on me or not. I've been doing that. I've been doing this a long time. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say it like that. That's a little heavy. That's brutal honesty, but I've just never heard somebody say it like that before. And I'm looking at you as a 27-year-old woman.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Note to the men out there, make sure you handle that topic that way. You know, seeing how you are now and learning, you know, what you've gone through, you've been feeling that way for a long time. What can you talk about, like, what it was like to just start to, as you said, look at this for what it is and see it in a different light?
So have you ever been caught in a downpour wearing jeans and boots and maybe a sweatshirt and nothing that's waterproof?
Yeah.
And then gone in, stripped down, and gotten into a warm shower? That's what this feels like. I have been able to strip off that cold, heavy weight that dragged me down and slowed my journey to home. And I'm finally home, and I'm in that warm shower.
Well, you're talking about that metaphorically, which is great, but realistically, you've lost weight
Yes.
to even add to that
Yes.
analogy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people are looking at you and they don't know.
That I used to weigh over 500 pounds.
Credible.
Yeah.
How I'm trying to piece together the reality of that weight on a physical level. And how, are they the same almost?
It's they're similar. They're definitely they're siblings. Because if it wasn't alcohol that I was using, it was food. If it wasn't food, it was, shopping. It was anything to what I thought was help bear the weight of the trauma.
I just did a couple interviews for potential clinicians that want to work at Racing for Recovery. And one of them had mentioned this was a phone interview I was conducting, and they were talking about how they had their own personal recovery of alcohol and drugs. And I'm like, that's great. And then they brought up the fact that they started getting into other things. And I said, this is what makes Racing for Recovery the best, is because, and it's in Cleveland, the whack-a-mole analogy. You can
Yes.
put one down, and if you don't heal, you're going to pick another one up. And this is someone who's she's been of service, and she's doing a great job. It's not about that. It's about enhancing what I know I can bring out of people in general. And it doesn't matter what the self-destructive modality is, right?
Right. Well,
and you're validating
and the
that.
biggest, I had a major light bulb moment this week where I realized it wasn't any of those things either. My drug of choice was avoidance. My drug of choice was avoiding feeling all of the pain, all of the joy, and everything in between. I chose that, which led me to the choice of drinking myself to death and eating myself to death. And so the foundation of why I believe I came to drinking and eating the way that I did is because I didn't want to look at myself. I didn't want to know that Jen existed. I wanted to just get through, just get by, because that was what was expected of me. It was expected of me to wake up in the morning, be a human being, and go to bed at night. But I never knew who that human being was or why she was here. And so by putting down avoidance and facing all of it, it's allowed me to understand that while that avoidance was there to keep me safe during the trauma, you know, it helped me hide in my bedroom closet. It helped me bury myself in art and books and music. It took me to marry a man in Europe. All of those things. It had its place. It also taught me that if I just didn't look at how I felt, I could comfort myself with drinking and food.
Wow. Okay. We're going to come back to this probably. All right. Sean, trauma. How did it impact you? As the other two fine ladies have discussed how they've looked at it and what they're doing to overcome. How about yourself?
Trauma. Coming through the door, I didn't really know what trauma was when I came through the door here. I knew that I was pretty self-aware. I used to tell myself, dude, you got some issues. You know, I used to, I guess, I used to tell myself I got some issues. And it's like I really wasn't quite sure how to deal with them at all. I mean, I've dealt with all my problems and my bad feelings with drugs and alcohol from the time I was like 12 years old. And coming through the door here, I had lost about four of my best friends within a year time span to suicide and drug addiction, which I guess to a point, and it's going to sound funny, but made me feel like the victim.
Interesting.
I lived with this, because it was always, oh, well, they've been, all these people have been taken from me. And, I have lost a number of people over the years, family members that I was really close to. And yeah, I came through the door like, all this, happened to me and poor me and oh, woe is me. And, I didn't know how to deal with it and continually made the choice to use drugs. Like the second I would start thinking about something, it's like, okay, I'm reaching for something, because I really, I think like a lot of people who struggle with addiction, as a child even, a lot of the times we don't get the education we need is, in how to deal with our feelings and emotions. Like growing up when I did, I'm kind of from a little bit of an older generation, but, back in, say the 80s when I was a kid, it was like things just happened and you just moved on and pushed past them and, chin up, chest out and be strong. But what I've come to figure out, after reading Cleveland opened my eyes to what trauma actually was. And what I discovered, after reading Cleveland was that, after doing a real heavy self-evaluation and evaluation of my past and where my drug and alcohol use started, I began to be able to identify traumatic events that happened that had an effect on me throughout the years. And I'm not a professional, but I just know what I know. Like, I didn't deal with so many things for so many years, everything. And I call it, I don't know whether it's a professional term, it's something I've kind of coined. I call it trauma stacking.
That's good.
Like over the years, like there was just so many things that happened to me that I did not deal with or process. It was like by the time I got to 44 years old last year, it was like I had so much stuff built up inside of me. Like, and I feel like that's kind of what used to create the racing thoughts that I used to have, because it's like I got all these things in my head and my head's bouncing back and forth from this to this to this to this to, you know? And yeah, it eventually led me to a mental breakdown, like a nervous breakdown, like having so much stuff inside of me that, you know, I spent time in a mental institution for a little bit thinking that I was just, you know, batshit crazy.
You've said it in there twice about being a professional. One of the things that I've noticed, well, it's common with all of us, and one of the things for you, it's specifically, is we have a tendency to downgrade ourselves constantly. You guys just did a group on it yesterday. This is another example of it. There's many professionals in the field that don't do what we're doing here, right? That have more education than I do or whatever. I'm not discounting them. I'm trying to make everything equal. The trauma stacking thing, that's brilliant. And that, right? That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You are you're a professional in your own right because it's you're dealing with, but that's brilliant. And it's true. And having that stuff end up having you go into a mental institution when you just needed some help as a kid or whatever is, well, it's what we do here, you know?
The thing is, I didn't just need help. I needed the right kind of help.
Yeah.
And coming here to Racing for Recovery, like I never spent time in any kind of a recovery, any type of rehab or anything. You know, this has been my first little foray into recovery and actually focusing on myself, and you know, the gratitude I have for the opportunity to have come here to actually work on myself and be given the time and not being pushed out there, because it's taken me, I'm going on December 3rd will be a year since I got here.
That's awesome.
You know, and
Yeah.
I was a complete mess when I came to, I felt like I was a complete mess. Like I was just in a very bad place mentally, and I understand why I was in such a bad place mentally. And I put a lot of work in on myself as far as, you know, therapy and facing the things and figuring out why I felt the way I did. Because, I mean, for me, it was like I had to figure out why before I could address the issue. I mean, in order to fix a problem, you have to know what it is.
Exactly.
And I was so empowered, you know, to be able to do that when I came through the doors here. And I tell you, people say they have problems, you know, recognizing their own growth, but it's like, I feel it inside of me, because I feel like a completely different person than I did when I first came through the doors.
And you know what's great in that too, and we'll start maybe talking about this, is you haven't lost the good of you. You know, we talked right away about music, and I find now even the musical, you know, your passion for music has even been enhanced. So it's not about, recovery is a beautiful thing to not only heal, but you get to realize, hey, there's good in me. Art, as Pam was talking about, same with Jen and your drive for music, and you're finding it in the kitchen and exercise. That's beautiful. Do you, you know what, why don't we just open this up to, you know, if you guys want to now like ask each other questions or give each other compliments that we can lead into another topic, maybe anxiety or depression or whatever, or something you want to ask me that we haven't covered that we can carry on. Where do you guys want to take this now?
That trauma stacking comment. So, and we actually just had a conversation earlier with a peer about how, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm realizing it now through this journey and you saying that, was when I had a counselor, therapist say to me, you don't have PTSD. You need to put a C in front of that because you have not just one event, you have a lifetime of these things. And when you said that, it's like, I saw this, it was almost like a stack of books because each of those events is a story. And in all of those things, like that was just so eloquent. It was so perfectly put because and then we're carrying this giant stack of these books and trying to navigate, rocky terrain, and watching you carry those things and step over the rocks in your way on this journey has been so inspiring. And I'm really grateful that like we've connected. We've all, like, you and I've connected on different but you and I have connected through some similar experiences and trauma that we've been through, with music. The day that I was in the kitchen and you were like, I never knew you were a rock and roller, and I was like, oh, you don't even know the half of it, man. and just, that is the thing about Racing for Recovery as well that is so unique to me, is that we are having the chance to meet and grow with people not based on our label of brokenness and being disease ridden and being weak and powerless. We are growing together in discovering our light, discovering our passions, discovering the joy, and sharing that with each other in this community. And both of you, like, there's days when I get overwhelmed with gratitude that I have people like you and Pam in my life, that it's just shared experiences, but we're not focusing on the brokenness. We're focusing on the joy that we find in each other and how we can support each other. And it's wonderful. It's just amazing.
Pam, what do you think about what Jen just said?
I'm thinking about how I see the same thing in you. What I was thinking about while you were talking is how I really enjoy watching both of you like humble yourselves and get in, into some very insightful things while still empathizing and using your gratitude to like keep going and to switch things around and be like, I'm going to choose to look at it like this. I hear both of you say things like that all the time, and it inspires me, and it brings me a lot of comfort and closeness that I haven't experienced in a long, long time, and only tiny little bits. So this is just like it's a revelation. So, and I'm just grateful for you guys, and I see you.
It's interesting. Once again, with a conversation like this, right? Nobody's mentioned what drug of choice they had or how much they did it or some other story involving what the quantity or what the substance was, not once. And when you're talking about a revelation, isn't it comforting to know that you can have a revelation of goodness that's relatable, right? It's relieving to listen to you guys. It's like I hear relief in here. There's compassion in here. There's motivation, understanding, right? That's what recovery is about. Not, I can relate to throwing up in somebody's dumpster. It's like, okay, let's relate to some goodness that we all need to learn why we were throwing up in the dumpster. And I hear that in you guys. It's great.
Well, and you display it, Racing for Recovery, you're immersed in it. I'm immersed in music when I walk through these halls, and I ran record stores for 25 years. Like, what a heavenly thing to walk around and be immersed in something that has brought me joy through years of pain. The fact that music plays all the time, the fact that we there's art on the walls that is from people who've been through this program, that it's like you're drowning in joy here instead of drowning in that pain and just the depths of despair that it used to be. And it's the most beautiful drowning. Like, how can you fathom, like, I'm drowning in joy, I'm drowning in acceptance, I'm drowning in being seen, and I want to breathe that in and let it fill every molecule, because it's almost unavoidable. Wow. Which is cool.
Yeah.
Super cool.
You know, the whole music thing around here, you know, I've kind of realized that looking back in my childhood, like I've always been really big into music. Like I wanted to be a rock star when I was a kid. You know, I used to, you know, love to watch David Lee Roth on MTV and the music videos and things. But, you know, a lot of the music that you listen to and that are, you know, on the posters out there and the walls are, you know, a lot of the music that I used to listen to with my parents and, you know, digging through their records and things like that when I was a kid. But, you know, I love the whole, you know, music thing here because, you know, when I look back at my childhood when I was really unhappy, like, and just, you know, mom and dad were fighting or whatever, you know, it was like I would go into my room and I would just turn my music up as loud as I could.
What'd you play back then?
Lots of different things. I mean, I still do. I mean, but I grew up on things like, well, you know, AC/DC. Motley Crue was another big one. Poison was big for me. You know, that was in the 80s. I mean, but then, you know, growing up in the 80s, that's when rap music first started. So I was big into like Run DMC and, you know, the Fat Boys and you know, just EPMD, a lot of different rap groups, you know, back then. And
Did you, and this is, I want to hear from all you guys on this, but did you have, Sean, music that when you were feeling depressed and maybe even suicidal, was there a song you put on then that is now looked at differently in your sobriety where it's just a totally different a version of how you're looking at that song?
Boy, I'm trying to think back. My childhood was so long ago. I guess I don't know. My suicidal ideations and things really didn't kick in until like my, you know, I think my 30s or 40s. But I guess, you know, one band that really comes to mind is Stained.
Oh, yeah.
Like their lyrics are pretty, you know, can get pretty dark and
Yeah.
pretty grim and things like that. But I don't know. I can't really on the spot. I can't really
It's all
think
right.
of one song. I mean, but I mean, I guess there's one song, you know, that you know, these days it's like it's been a while, you know,
Yeah.
since I could, you know,
Yeah. Good
hold my
tune.
head up high.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's another song by them. It's actually called Fade, is one of my favorite songs. It's, you know, speaks about, you know, stepping out of the darkness and into the light and, you know, just overcoming things.
Pam, what about you with music?
Definitely. My parents both loved music. I really identified with music from movies. Like I would hear something and I'd be like, I need to hear that again. And I would sit before we had like CDs and MP3s and stuff, I would sit by the radio with my cassette tape in there ready to press record so I could
Yeah.
have it, so I could listen to it on repeat. And my song was actually, there's a movie called Somewhere in Time with Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve, and he uses his mind to go back in time to be with this woman, which I see now. I was actually always obsessed with, like, how does someone use their mind to make stuff happen? Like, how amazing is that? But the song is called Somewhere in Time, and it's like an instrumental song, and I believe it was by Rachmaninoff.
I think you're right.
I feel like that might be wrong, but it's just like a very moving song, and like you feel like, you know, like how times change, and how but there's times that are like, you know, there's a quote like, the holiest of holidays are those kept in secret and alone, like, you know, for yourself. I lost it there at the end, but
Wow.
the secret anniversaries of the heart.
You mentioned the power of the mind. We've been talking, I think some of the groups I've ran recently, talking about the power of the subconscious and how much the subconscious is actually driving us. How has the thirst of knowledge, specifically with some of the stuff that may be looked at as, well, that's out there or whatever. But, you know, when you're talking about the power of the mind on a subconscious level, how has some of that been helping to just enhance everything that you're doing here?
Oh, it's beautiful. I am amazed at how much we retain and like kind of get to use again and again. We were talking about one of the groups today, like some of the bad stuff that we did. We had skills still. There were things that like set me apart in the crimes I committed, that I can use now for, like, you know, for good and not evil. So, and I feel like those are kind of things that come from the subconscious. Like, even when I was at my worst, I still had things that I had collected along the way, and now just to have the choice to use them how I want to use, you know, how, not how I want to use them, in a better way.
Jen, we've talked about, I remember the day I was asking you, like, stereotypical questions and treatment, you know, did you excel academically? Did you, like, all the cliches that, not cliches,
Indicators?
indicators, good word, thank you, that exhibit some of the things you've been through. Talk about the intellectual part of this, again, the subconscious, or using our thoughts, how that's really helped you.
My brain is my greatest ally and also my biggest enemy sometimes. But one thing that resonated with what you just said, Pam, was that, you know, the things that I learned I can tap into, but I'm also seeing how expansive my mind still is, and that I have so much more that I want to learn, and I can now. I have the choice to learn it.
How much in the goodness of learning do you need to unlearn?
Oh, there's so much. And sometimes, and you touched on this too, it's not maybe that I need to unlearn it, it's that I need to understand how to use it for healthy, beneficial growth rather than negativity, like the avoidance. You know, I now use avoidance as a tool to, I don't even walk down aisles that have alcohol in them when I go to the grocery store. It's a safety net. I'm making a smart choice with that skill of avoidance rather than using the avoidance to not look at how I'm feeling. And so I think I do need to unlearn a lot of language, negative language that I've used on myself. And so it's understanding the power that I have inside me, not just intellectually, but intuitively. And marrying those two to understand that when my gut is telling me, pay attention, my brain needs to kick in and really look at what it's saying.
And the connection to mind and body,
Yes.
paramount. And the more I'm a student too, you guys know that, but I'm reading stuff a lot lately about, I've always known, the body and the mind are one. I didn't realize how important that is. And actually, it's the body that's driving the mind. We're using the mind a lot of times to overcome the body, which is not bad, but it's through that subconscious that really the body understands that and it overrides the mind. That's where addiction has really taken hold. It's the body's DNA changes to where it's saying, I need this stuff in me, even though our minds know I shouldn't be doing this. That's addiction, right? And having more of an understanding of that and then saying, okay, if I can connect that knowledge of mind and body and understand that the body's DNA needs rewiring, that's why I said unlearned or learning, then the body starts to know, oh, I want to cope with music. I want to cope with art when I'm feeling suicidal or whatever, or I'm exercise. It's all the stuff we do here. Then it becomes in the mind that the mind knows what to do. And that's a different ballgame.
And that's where that choice comes in
Yes.
for me. It's understanding that my mind can provide the guidance to make the right choices to change my body's need to cope in maladaptive ways.
Had you ever learned any of that in your attempts at, yeah.
No, it was reinforced that I was broken and that all I needed to do was admit that I was broken and that I was powerless and that I needed to it almost felt as though I needed to just ignore what was really going on my entire life that got me to this point and just live for today. Okay, well, what got me to today? What put me in a place where I want to die and I want to do it with the worst substances I can put in my body? What is it that put me there? By understanding now that not only am I not broken, I have the power to look at all of those things and understand what got me to this place. It changes everything.
I don't use the word fat when describing people. I use the word heavy, but I'm going to use fat for a moment. Can you imagine if every time we were in one of our groups here and it was not forced, but implied that you had to reintroduce yourself as a fat, 500-pound drunk.
Right.
And then at the same time, the next topic would be, so how are you feeling today, Jen? The more we discuss things like this, and I'm even doing it right now, I'm like, I literally don't understand why people think that that's an effective way of helping somebody.
And that was being constantly reminded every time I sat at a table of people that I already knew. They don't need to tell me. I know why you're there. Whether you're there as a substance user or you're as someone who's been impacted by it, you're a human being who has trauma. Having to be in a place where I was reminding myself every day that I had failed. I'm a drunk and I'm sick. You know, I've seen it in some of the other lines of work that I've been in healthcare, where I've seen the power of people who have cancer, of people who have, other very frightening diseases, the power of positivity in their healing.
Wow. Yeah. You give us an example of that.
I've worked with patients previously that diagnosed with, like I said, cancers, things of that. And I've literally been in the presence of two patients where one was listening to music, reading books, crocheting, happy, focusing on while they're getting their treatment. And the other one, on their phone playing solitaire crying and seeing this person walk out of that treatment and go into remission, and this one go into their funeral.
You're giving us another example of what I was talking about with the power of the mind with the body and changing that genetic makeup. You can be done.
It is the same thing for me, and I have been very open, I had surgical assistance with my weight loss. Okay. So did my spouse. A month apart. I have been in multiple tracks of therapeutic intervention since. He has not. I have maintained my weight loss even through my substance use. He has not. Simply accepting that I needed assistance with my mental health and my emotional health. Surgery a month apart, Todd. A month apart.
Wow.
And again, I know that I had other things that I was doing in there to cope in inappropriate ways, but I was still seeking help. And I was understanding that that power was inside me, that there was still joy in me, that even though I felt like I had been burnt to the ground, there was still an ember. And watching someone that I loved so deeply, same opportunity. It's heartbreaking.
I hear you, Sean, and I want to go back to you being on the couch. As Jen was talking right there, I was thinking of you in that state that you were back there. How do you correlate what Jen was just saying there about the two, basically the same people taking a different route? Can you put yourself in there as the person who was on the couch and the person now who's never going to be on that couch again? What's the difference between those two?
I believe the difference is that I lost that victim mentality, and I don't feel like I'm a victim anymore.
And we're talking about choice again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, laying on that couch, I laid on that couch for a long time. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating. I'd maybe eat a frozen pizza here and there, whatever bones were pitched to me, or and I would pretty much just get up off the couch for a while. If I wasn't getting high, I was on the couch, and I just was just so, feeling sorry for myself for so long. And, I had an experience where, basically I got to be so miserable and isolated myself for so long, for a good couple years. One night I just decided to try to end it all.
How do those, and I love the spiritual awakenings, whatever moment that is. But I keep thinking as we're looking around at some of the stuff we talked about today, choice, lifestyle, exercise, nutrition, take our former selves and our current selves, there is a shift that happens. It seems to go either way. You can be given the shift. For example, I'm having suicidal thoughts and something happens and I come out of it. It can come to you, and those are truly gifts, or I think we have the power to create it. In my case, getting my third DUI, that was what some people would consider, oh, dude, man, that sucks. And I'm like, man, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because of how we respond to it. What do you guys think about that? Do these spiritual awakenings, they happen to us? Do we create them? Is it a combination of both? What do you think?
I think mine was a combination of both. Like, it's funny because I actually just spoke on this in a group. Like, as I was saying, I had tried to end everything. I was so miserable and just couldn't find my way out of it. And, just sitting around one night, and I made a choice to, we'll just say, take some stuff and overdo it. And, I remember falling to the floor, and I remember my eyes closing. I remember saying a prayer, and I just remember my eyes closing. And, I was like, oh, this is it, closed my eyes and laid there on the concrete floor in the garage for, I don't know, 30 plus hours or something, and sub-freezing temperatures. And, I guess I woke up a day later on my own, covered in my own vomit, and just kind of looked around, and it was like, I
Got to do something.
yeah.
That's when is that when you went into the hospital then, right?
I actually dicked around for a couple more months
Okay.
and lived in misery for a while. I mean, actually, after I woke up from that, it was just like, well, you can't even kill yourself properly, So it's like I went and poured a cup of coffee and lit a cigarette and got high again, and, continued.
Yeah.
But then, a couple months later, it just kind of really hit me and set in with me. And it was like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's time. You're miserable. You don't this isn't how you're supposed to feel. And yeah, I stumbled into a hospital in Bowling Green, Wood County Hospital. I stumbled into, and they knew I was on drugs. They didn't know what to do with me, and they called the Unison Health, and they sent some professionals in to come talk to me there, and then they took me to Unison. And the SUD counselor that I met there, I stayed in the stabilization unit for a couple weeks, and I met her there, and we got really close, professionally and client-wise. Like, she kind of looked out for me while I was there, and she had actually stayed here. And she told me, I know a place where I think you'll do good. And I really didn't know anything about the place. She just told me they've got a killer gym, and I was like, sign me up.
Right, that's cool. We have two of them. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm like, sign me up. Like, I didn't know who you were. I had no clue about anything about the place. I just knew that for once in my life, I actually trusted somebody, and I trusted her. And obviously it had worked for her because she went from staying here to being a mental health professional. So
Cool.
I took the leap, and I was terrified when I came through the door. I was struggling with anxiety. I was still trying to pull myself up out of that major depression, and I didn't quite understand how it worked around here. I was like, just trust the process is what Shane, my case manager, told me, which he really kind of looked out. He did look out for me and took care of me. And, it was like, and I've heard it before, but it was like the longer I stuck around here, and like, it wasn't easy at first. It took me about 2-3 months to kind of, start to come out of that fog and kind of get acclimated. But I kind of forced myself to, do the things. I didn't understand how they were going to work, but it was like after about, I think maybe, 4 to 5 months, maybe my 6th month in, like, it was like things really kind of started to click with me. I kept drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And I don't know, everything just, on top of that, working on my spirituality and my faith and things, like, it's like I slowly started to feel better, and dealing with everything that weighed me down for years. I've heard the story, about, dropping that weight,
Yeah.
you know, that you've been carrying around for so long. And it's like, once I dropped all that weight that I was carrying, it was like I felt lighter, and it just felt, I started feeling better, and just kept doing the things that were making me feel better. And now I mentally and physically, I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life.
I dig it. Pam, was it a light bulb moment for you, a transition kind of like that Sean was talking about, or how was the turning point happening for you?
It was ultimately something that I did to myself that appeared really bad, but ended up being, I sold my car for drugs. And I had always had a car. It was my freedom. It was everything. And at that point, it was my house. And I definitely haven't cried that hard since. And this is going on a few years ago now. And I was devastated. And at first I saw it as like the rock bottom, or like the depths of which, drugs had taken me. And then I realized, but I was no longer complacent. I no longer had a roof to hide under. I had nowhere to sleep. I was going to have to sleep outside. And then that was bad enough for me to say, I need help.
So hearing that again, we don't have to, I'm using these cliche terms again. We don't have to we don't have to hit a proverbial rock bottom. We can create a new beginning.
Absolutely. There were
anytime.
many things that I had not done yet that I could have still
Correct.
done.
Yep.
And I that was enough for me.
Yeah. Instead of telling somebody, well, go back out until you hit rock bottom, how can we assist you in creating a new beginning right now?
Someone described it as an elevator to me one time, that you can, the elevator will actually keep going down forever and ever, but you can choose to get off at any floor you want.
And it can go up forever and ever too, right?
I see that now.
Yeah, right. They don't tell you that, right?
They don't
right?
tell you that, and it's such a glorious feeling. It's incredible.
It's that I refer to this as the never-ending journey of self-betterment, and you don't have it licked until you die of natural causes. I firmly believe that. The notion that somehow you're going to get to some point and you've got it, and I'm like, you're about, no. That's a lack of humility right there. Just knowing this is always going to go in a productive manner while I overcome hardships, because we're all going to have them. It's a never-ending journey of self-betterment, right? That's great. Jen, you got a spiritual or a light bulb moment or anything like that?
I've had multiple, and I think some of those light bulbs have come on and then burst. So there was the light was extinguished for a moment. But I think the most recent one was choosing to come into Racing for Recovery sober, because I knew I was living a fulfilling life. Or so I thought. And I would go about my day, happy little bouncing around a farmer's market, planting vegetables, painting pictures, what have you. And I laid down every night, and I still just didn't want to wake up the next day. And I was handed this book, and that was the most recent, the big light bulb that has stayed lit, and my eyes are still adjusting to that light, where just because I wasn't in active use at the time, I had not looked at why. And when I read that I had a choice to understand why, and that recovery and sobriety is not a one and done thing. It's every single day for the rest of my life. Just the word lifestyle of recovery. It was like little Christmas bulbs all lighting up in a row. You have a choice. This is a lifestyle. You don't have to want to die. You can choose to look at the hard stuff and do it without using and heal. Bing, 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 bing.
So let's do that. I haven't done this. I want to do word association for a second. And one thing that I'm thinking about, this one's 2 words to start with. What if? Now, I'll give you guys can answer this however you want. When I say what if, what comes to mind, but here's where I'm thinking of this. Somebody right now or soon that's going to see this podcast. What if we didn't do it? And I'm thinking of how that book helped you and I don't know if you know this or not, I let a friend of mine read it. In the beginning of it's pretty intense, or the introduction. He read it and he goes, dude, you can't put that out there. And I go, why? And he's a great friend of mine, but he's not one of us, as they say. He goes, that's gonna ruin everything that you've created, and people are gonna think you're crazy or whatever. I'm like, no. It's going to unite the people that think the way I do. So right there, when I'm bringing up this what if, and you all can go around and answer what you think of what if I'd have listened to him? Right? That then I don't write it. You don't get it. The person who's going to hear you today and go, wow, what does that girl have that I can go get? So when I say what if, what comes to your mind?
What if I actually choose me?
Awesome. What if, Sean?
What if I hadn't tried to kill myself?
Wow. Pam.
What if I get everything and more back?
There you go. Yeah. So let's keep doing that, see how quick I can think of some stuff. Enlightenment.
Living in a pattern of behaviors or lifestyle that keeps me elevated.
Okay, we'll do one more. Powerless.
Me?
Yeah, I'm coming back to you.
I used to think I was powerless.
Now what?
Now I feel empowered.
Okay. Pam, powerless.
I'm thinking useless. Like, that's a useless way of thinking. Will never get me anywhere.
Okay. Jen, powerless.
My biggest motivator.
There you go. If you ask me that, I'd say I'll keep it PG. Bull crap.
I was going to ask you how far can I take my language, because it would get the big old F you.
Yeah. Right? So, empowerment.
Possibility and opportunity.
Empowerment, Sean.
The opportunity to do whatever I choose to do.
Pam.
Having a life so good that I don't even want to have to do drugs.
We got a couple more minutes. I literally could do this all day. I keep thinking, how long is somebody going to watch this? And I'm like, I'd watch it.
I would
I'd be
too.
like, that's it? Again, the first time we've done this format, I'm like, I want to do this again. To somebody that's watching right now that you haven't met, that feels the way you did before you came here, what do you say to them, Pam?
Don't give up hope. That sounds so like cliche too, but like I've talked about this before. Like, even if you just have hope for hope, then you got something.
Okay. Jen, what do you say to Sally in Tuscaloosa, Tennessee? That's a place, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah, it is now.
It is now. Self-love changes the dynamic of everything.
What do you say to your former self?
Thank you.
Wow. Sean, what do you say to Billy in Mobile, Alabama?
Well, Billy, hang in there. And even though you feel like there's nobody out there who could possibly understand, there is.
Mobile, Alabama is where I did my first speaking engagement. That's why I brought that up. Talked about that last night because the dude from Three Doors Down, they're from Alabama, right? Or no,
Aren't they from Florida? I don't know.
Creed's from Florida. Three Doors Down, I think, is from Alabama. We'll have to
No.
fact check that.
No, I feel like I should have done it with a southern twang.
What would you say to your former self?
Get up and go, dude.
Okay. Pam, I didn't ask you that. What would you say to your former self?
You don't have to wait for it to get bad.
Wow. Right on. I say this to everybody, maybe I need to quit doing this, but any questions for me that you want to ask that maybe we can keep talking or not?
So, see all these music posters all around here all the time. And I think I know the answer, but just verify for me, who is your absolute favorite band? It's hard for me to pick favorites, but do you have an absolute favorite musician
Well,
or group?
I'll answer it this way. All the music stuff that's up here, that struck a chord. To me, it's an example of you can. Because all of these people, they're not rock stars to me, they're people. They are now relatable. I look at a lot of them with empathy. Some of them I can look to as peers, knowing kind of what they're doing now in their sobriety that I'm doing. One in particular that I won't want to get into, I look at with a lot of compassion for understanding that his still lack of self, even though he stands in front of 60,000 people a night, it's interesting but relatable. Again, it reminds me of a time of desperation, a time of no hope, that through action and stopping self-destruction has given me everything that I was looking for in these posters as a kid, that now I live in a reality. So a favorite, it's hard to put on there. I think Led Zeppelin on the wall over there. My dad told me I was running the turntable with those guys when I was 3. Motley Crue, there's not a high school diploma amongst all 4 of those guys, and yet some of the business things that they've done are applicable here. These passes are backstage passes. So there's a lot of business things. Metallica, some of the things they've done business-wise, I've learned from to do what we're doing here. So it's not even about music, really. It's about enhancing life that music is a part of. But to put a favorite, that's tough, Yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but that's an honest, good answer. Yeah. Jen, any questions? Pam?
I do. In a few words, who or what gave you the gift of veganism?
I watched on February 1st, 2016, I watched the movies on Netflix. I don't know which one was first. I watched Knives Over Forks. I watched a couple other things. What the Health, I believe, was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The Thing. I can't think of the name of, oh, not domination. What do we call it when we think we're
Dominion?
superior?
Dominion.
Yes. That led me somehow to watching a cow getting ready to get killed. And he's in a pen and his buddy
I've seen
is
it.
he's in front. And the buddy goes through and then the cow realizes what's happening
And
and
he
he
can't
tries to
turn
get
around.
out. That broke me. I mean, literally, I cried and I'm man enough and I'm even wearing pink. And I will use a profanity. I don't give a shit what
strength.
anybody feels about me talking like this. It broke me. I'm like, I can't do it. I won't. And something shifted in me. And we talked about this before about the goodness coming out. I know I've been a decent person. I've done some bad stuff in addiction. We all have, right?
Mm.
But I knew in the core of me that, and this is quite a few years into sobriety, I'm like, you're a good dude. And that soul brought that out of me. And I'm like, I'm going to use that suffering of that sentient being, and I'm going to use it to embrace my good, and I'm going to do some effing good with it. That's what shifted it. And it's like, I'm not, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because you wanted a few words. I'm not lecturing to anybody. I don't lecture about sobriety to anybody. You want to go drink yourself to death? Go do it. You want to have heart disease and die from diabetes? Go ahead. But you don't have to. And if you want to talk about how not to do that, I'm here. But if you want to justify why you're doing it and try and convince me I'm wrong for not doing it, beat it. Go back to the bar. I'm not interested in it. No, I'm going to take
Right
some
on.
flack for saying that, but that's okay.
Mm.
Yeah, that's passion. I have the same passion for this as I do for sobriety because they enhance each other.
They really do.
And I didn't know that for I've only been, well, I'm not going to say only, I've been on the good side of food for almost 9 years. I've been on the good side of not using drugs for quite a few more than that. And I'm like, damn, I wish they would have met up earlier, but it's all good.
Yeah, I feel blessed for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That book is a hard book. It's, 550 pages, and my co-author, Fox, is brilliant.
Mm.
But it's worth reading, right? I mean, you did it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's life-changing for sure.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, that was more than a few words, but
That's okay. No, I said that so that you wouldn't go even further than that.
that's good. Thanks. All right. Jen, anything or
If there's one thing that you could add to Racing for Recovery to, I don't want to say strengthen, augment what we're already doing, what would it be? What's one thing that you think, we need that?
we need more people like yourselves to come in here. We need more people like yourselves to do what we do here. Then we need more people like yourselves to come in here, do what we do here, get some letters, and work here, and take your talents and make it better.
Done.
Yeah, right on.
Doing
That's been my dream of that has already become a reality. My drive and commitment is just to get more of it. Like I said, I don't just, I've made it. It's like, we can do more. That's, my mind is there every day. How do we get better? How do we get better? But simultaneously embracing we are awesome and not minimizing that, but always looking, how do we get better? This podcast. I've hired 2 awesome people, Abby and Matt, that have taken what we were doing before and made it better than I ever thought we could. And that's being willing to be taught and then utilizing talents that I don't have to make it better. I love the art therapy stuff. We've tried it. We need to do it again. Everything that we've talked about today is great here. I just want to make it better and reach more people. So,
I love that.
yeah.
Because I think about this model often and how I've lived all over the world. And this doesn't exist in other places the way that it exists here.
What if this podcast, somebody sees it in London and says, we want to do it over here? That's where my mind goes every time.
I'll dust off my passport.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I tend to get impassioned about things that impact me as it is. But this place has metaphysically shifted everything inside me.
Well, right on.
Mm.
That's a great place to stop. I thank you guys. We'll do more of these. I appreciate it. You guys are doing great here. I'm proud of you, if that sound is okay to say. And everybody that's watching, share this. Listen to these people, these awesome souls, and share it. And until next time, check out the rest of our videos. Thanks.